Good morning, everybody. You're listening to KNCE Taos 93.5 FM True Taos Radio. I'm Isabella O'Donnell-Silfverberg, and I'm here with the latest installment in the TK1 Democracy Project. I'm speaking to Senior Senator Martin Heinrich. Good morning, Senator.
Good morning. Great to be with you.
Yeah, great to have you here. How are you?
I'm great. I'm always well when I'm in Taos.
I think many people are.
Puts me in a better frame of mind.
It's a wonderful place to be for Earth Day.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we're excited to have you on with Earth Day coming up because environmental action and emissions reduction are a central part of your platform. And you recently introduced the Zero Emissions Homes Act, which aims to make electrical energy more accessible to American homes.
Yeah, I really realized in over the last few years of working on decarbonization that most of what we need to do to make the electric sector and power generation zero emissions is already stuff we already know how to do. It's now cost effective. In fact, solar is the cheapest form of energy on the planet now. And a lot of that is just marching forward, and we'll continue to do that. And as we clean up our power grid, we have to start looking at all those other places where we have locked in emissions right now. And there is so much fossil gas built into our homes, our businesses, and it makes up a substantial portion of our carbon footprint. And so being able to switch out gas infrastructure in a way that is not a financial burden and replace it with the latest updated, super efficient electric appliances, whether that's a heat pump water heater or a heat pump to heat and cool your home, both. An induction stove, instead of burning fossil gas in your stove and having benzene and all these things come into your house. That is a huge part of the solution for how we really dramatically decarbonize the economy.
So it's not only using electrical energy, it's making our homes more efficient themselves, so we don't have to use as much energy, period.
Yeah, absolutely, and healthier. Because, when you're burning these things in your homes in a closed environment, and we're making our homes more efficient, but at the same time, that means better sealed, more closed. You really don't want to be burning things inside your home that cause air pollution problems. It's a huge driver, a high risk factor if you have somebody with respiratory problems in your home, or if you have a family member with asthma. Being able to switch out things like a gas stove for an induction stove, a modern induction stove, just makes everyone, the indoor air quality environment so much healthier for people.
Yeah, absolutely. And in your line of work, I'm sure you've heard many of the criticisms of electrical energy, including that solar and wind often need to be supplemented by burning natural gas. And I guess I'm just wondering, how do you deal with these criticisms? What do you say to that? Do you plan on introducing solar and wind in a way that doesn't need to be supplemented, or? Well,
right now, there are different ways to build out your supply and demand curves. The key thing in producing energy on the grid is to make sure you have enough energy at the moment you need it to meet all demand. And the vast majority of that can be done just with renewables like wind, solar, and geothermal. Then you have to fill the gaps, and you usually know a day ahead of time what the weather is going to look like with modern forecasting. And how you fill that gap is relevant, but it only gets relevant once you get very high penetration levels of renewables, and we're not there yet. So as we bring down the cost of things like lithium ion storage, potential other forms of battery storage, there are ways to build those two things that make sure that at any given moment that you have that reliability. There's a tendency to want to argue about the things that aren't the challenge right now, and to say that because we haven't solved every problem, that we can't solve the things that are obviously right in front of us. Mm-hmm. And that is a point of view that's tended to be driven by people trying to create doubt, just like we saw in the tobacco industry decades ago, create doubt about the solutions so that you're able to extend how long you can reap profits out of the current system. And I just think there are so many solutions right in front of us that are so much cheaper. You know, you look at what coal costs for electricity, and it's dramatically more than wind and solar. And so we need to provide affordable energy to people and do it in a way that doesn't sacrifice our planet and our kids' futures.
Yeah. And kind of continuing in that line of questioning, I guess, what would you say to people who would make the argument that the costs are more than the benefits? Because to store any type of energy, you need batteries, right? And one of the main ingredients used in these batteries is lithium, and lithium mining can be extremely harmful. So to people who would argue that mining more lithium is not worth storing solar energy, what would you say?
Everybody who has a cell phone has lithium. Oftentimes when you see the different disinformation that's on the web, those memes are not even of lithium mines. A lot of lithium is actually harvested from salt brines. There are ways to produce lithium that are very responsible, and we're going to need, if we're going to have a stable climate, we're going to have to produce some of those things. It's key to have very high standards for producing those things. In addition, there are things like iron air batteries that are now becoming viable to do things like long duration storage. So not just 4 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours, but actually days, weeks, months that are that look like they're going to cost dramatically less and use easier to source minerals. So these are all things that, I mean, we are the most advanced country in the world technologically when we choose to be, and these are all solvable problems. Usually the challenges that are brought up are not the really hard engineering problems. They're usually more of a rhetorical way of saying, let's keep doing things the old-fashioned way. Let's keep burning coal. Let's keep producing oil and natural gas, and ignore that huge thing called climate change that is the driver of the fires that we're experiencing right now, the driver of the wind speeds that we're experiencing, which are nothing like they were 25 years ago. I mean, I just came from Ruidoso, where old-growth ponderosa pine trees, got snapped off 50 feet up, 92-mile-an-hour gusts. It's always been windy here in the spring, but that's outrageous. And when you get a fire on top of that, these are not conditions that we want to worsen and to pass on to your generation and the generations after yours. Yeah, absolutely. Everyone in Taos can attest to the fact that there have been unusual winds this spring, especially. So in addition to reducing emissions, you're also interested in expanding accessibility to outdoor recreation in New Mexico. Will you just touch on some of the benefits of this and how you would go about doing that? You bet. So one, I want to give credit to where credit is due. New Mexico's been a real leader in outdoor equity and created an outdoor equity fund that was designed to get access to the outdoors and to our public lands to populations that don't have them. And they do everything from just grants to be able to do transportation so you can do outdoor learning with a fourth grade class, for example. Some of the leaders around that, Representative Rubia, Gabe Vasquez, who used to be on the city council in Las Cruces, realized that they had this amazing national monument that we created a few years ago, but a lot of the elementary school students had never really been there. And now there are ways to connect those people together with the places that are right in their backyard that they might not know. We're trying to take that model and make it national. We've been working with a very broad coalition of groups from around the country and do the same thing at the national level by virtue of creating a foundation that really focuses on these issues and funding the connections between people and the public lands in their backyards. Yeah, it's very important for all environmental actions to be connected to the land that you're living on. And then make sure that everyone has access to do this. There's public lands are one of the foundations, one of the best outcomes of our democracy, because in other places, it's only the rich that have access to natural places and to the places that really feed our hearts and souls. And in the United States of America, anyone, no matter how thick or thin their wallet is, can go out and experiences places like outside the window in this studio where you have the Rio Grande del Norte National Monument. That is a very, it's something that levels the playing field in a way that does not exist in most countries in the world.
Yeah. So in addition to reducing emissions and expanding accessibility to outdoor recreations, one of your platforms is also expanding access to the ballot and making sure that people are able to vote. So this is a huge issue in a lot of states and counties right now, with voter registration rolls being slashed and a bunch of stuff like that. So how do you plan to combat this?
I think we need a multi-pronged approach. And at the national level, we need to recognize that there is an effort to disenfranchise certain voters in order to win elections. And we saw this in many places, but most acutely, I would say, like in Georgia, after the last set of elections, when two Democratic senators got elected in Georgia, and the African-American community was so critical in that election. A whole host of laws got changed in order to make it harder to vote. And in many cases, this results in people standing in line for hours and hours. I think it's hard for, suburban Anglo voters to imagine standing in line for 6 hours, but that's a normalcy in many places around the country that have these highly restrictive laws. In Georgia, they made it illegal to pass out water in those voter lines. So we need a federal response to that to make it a level playing field for all voters. And we need state and local laws that really enshrine that right more effectively. And I will say New Mexico at the state level has been an absolute leader in this. And so we should have things like same-day registration. We need to make sure we have adequate early voting. All of the things that during COVID led to much higher voter turnout are the things that we should be seeking to protect, because that's what's trying to be rolled back after frankly, the Republican Party saw that higher turnout meant less success in elections. They decided to try to juice turnout in one direction or another. Young people are one of the college students, and young people generally under 18 to 25 are one of the populations that are consistently targeted to make it harder to vote.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being with us here today. We have unfortunately reached our time, but for everyone listening, this is the latest installment in the TK1 Democracy Project. I'm here with Senator Martin Heinrich. Thank you so much for being with us and answering some of my questions today.
Thanks for having me.
It has been a pleasure.